Welcome to the Solstice Recovery LA podcast. Today, I just want to take a moment and say thank you very much for my business partner, good friend, Clayton, coming on the podcast today. I've known him for years and years and years now. What, like 7 years, 8 years?
Something like that.
Something ridiculous, some ridiculous amount of time. We started a sober living together, Bloom Recovery, which you hear me talk about all the time, and Thousand Oaks together. And he's a very dear friend and good person to have in your life. I've seen him go through a lot of changes. He's seen me go through a lot of changes, and we've become closer because of that. And I'm super grateful to have you on here, man. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Basically, this is just like a recovery-based podcast.
Okay.
You know, you want to tell them about the first time we met.
We were at a meeting, late night meeting, and this was a meeting that I don't want to say it wasn't taken seriously, but it was a good time. I think is the best way to put it. And Eric was new, and I think I had a couple years at the time.
I think you had a year and a half. I had like 6 months or something.
Okay.
I was very new. I was in my first year of sobriety.
And it was like a stadium style seating, and we're in the back cracking jokes, laughing, having a great time, and Eric did not like that. Eric truly felt we were disrespecting the meeting and the people in it, and Eric wanted nothing to do with me, to say the least. I think
I was revolted by him. Let's just say that
he's not the first one.
Not the first one. But no, I remember it was like you and David Miller were hanging out in the back and just cracking jokes and laughing while the speaker was trying to speak. You guys like ended up running outside because you guys were laughing so hard. I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. This is an AA meeting. We're supposed to be serious.
I forgot what happened why we were laughing so hard. I don't remember.
But I mean, it was a 10:30 p.m. late night meeting in North Hollywood where everybody was under the age of like 25 years old. Of course this shit's going to happen. And we're all just like newly sober. We're mostly newly sober alcoholics. And we're just trying to get out of our head late at night and stay sober and have fun. And me, I was just so cerebral, so in my head at that time. But we forget like that, some of the most fun I've ever had was sitting with you after a meeting or like at like Crave Cafe after a meeting, just shooting the shit for hours and hours and hours.
Man, those were good times. No responsibilities. We would just work in like 9 to 5s or something like that, or whatever,
Dude, you would work at Fat Sal's, and
oh my god, I hated that place. Yes,
and you would like steal their merch and just sell it.
I wouldn't put it like that. I don't think I would put it like that, but yeah.
How would you put it?
I was more worker friendly than that. I wasn't just pocketing the money for myself. I was putting it in the tip jar so all the employees could get the money.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Socialism right there.
Yes. Right? Yeah, I was a big advocate for everybody to get a piece.
Everybody gets a piece, That was the funniest shit. I just also remember like riding around in your car, anything to not be alone as well. Like anything to not be alone. And I would just ride around with your car and you'd do like DoorDash. Or Postmates.
Oh, yeah.
And we just like kick it while you just did Postmates.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I can't be alone in my head. Like, And that was like, that's the amount that we depend on people in early recovery. And that's like the fellowship.
Yeah.
And how important that is in developing relationships in AA. Because no matter what, somebody will always be down to like come like hang out with you or do something with you, and just so you're not in your head and you're safe and you're protected.
Yeah. It's, because neither of us got sober through, I don't think, you didn't go to treatment, right?
I didn't go to treatment.
Yeah, I didn't go to treatment either. And it was like, I think that's almost a downside to treatment is like you don't get those experiences early on.
Yeah.
You don't get like the camaraderie of just like, once the meeting's done, you don't just go back to a place and then you're stuck there, right? It's like you still have to go on and live your life, and, you still have these everyday real world responsibilities that you have, but you're also trying to stay sober, so it's like you learn very early on to lean on people that you're close with. And I think that's like, it's easier when you're in treatment, right? Because you're almost like you're stuck in a way. and you have the staff and like therapists and all these things like at your disposal almost, and it doesn't give you like the real chance to like go out and figure that stuff out on your own. And I'm not like, dude, like I think treatment is great. I think it provides people with so much care that they do need in order to stay sober. But I think that there are little things that people miss out on, especially early on in sobriety, that, almost like shape them for the rest of sobriety. Learning how people show up for you and then in turn being able to show up for others, almost in that way.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, yeah, I definitely didn't get sober in a sober living. And I definitely didn't get sober at a treatment center. I got sober through like just sitting my ass down in a meeting and listening to old timers speak.
Yeah.
And just saying, sit down, shut up, and work the steps.
Yeah.
It's a very old school way of getting sober that you don't really hear about too much nowadays. Now it's just like, it's almost a little like like treatment is so good. Like you're saying, it provides so many people with the support that they need at this time in their life. It's a very tumultuous life, but a lot of it is over coddling these people and these alcoholics.
Yeah. And a lot of the time too is like the people that you're getting sober with in those treatment centers, they're going to move away. Once their 30 days, 60 days, 90 days is up, they're gone.
Yeah.
And that's like the unfortunate reality of it. So it's like that support system, that you feel like you have is come and go.
Yeah.
And it's not, there's no foundation to it almost.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like, obviously like there are going to be a couple people in your life, but it just depends, I guess, is the best way I can put it.
Yeah, it's important to build that fellowship. And I always tell the guys in our house, if they are from out of town and they are moving away, I said, go find some Zoom meetings that are taking place in your town. Start doing them here so that when you go over there, you have a already built-in community back home, sobriety community, and where the meetings are at, and develop relationships with people. And Zoom makes it so accessible nowadays to go to meetings all over the world. You go to meetings that are taking place in Honolulu when you're in Nebraska. It's great. It's the one good thing that came out of the pandemic. These accessible Zoom meetings, and it showed that how adaptable us alcoholics could be when shit hits the fan and everything goes on lockdown. And one of the major tenets of our program is unity. And when we go on lockdown, that was completely stripped away from us. Yeah. We're so adaptable, and we got on Zoom and we kept that unity. I know it's crazy. I know like a handful of people who got sober just through Zoom meetings. And I'm like, how the fuck did
and
you
also
do that?
Meetings that started just on Zoom that now have physical locations too.
Yeah.
Like Radford Hall, for example, they were closing down. Their doors were basically closed at the start of the pandemic. The Zoom came along. They started their zombies meeting. And now their new spot is, I don't know if you've been there yet, but it's really nice.
Have you been there?
Yeah.
I haven't been there yet. I haven't had a chance.
It's good.
Go out. I remember the old Radford Hall though. The funniest thing,
the nitty gritty,
the fucking, this place was so grimy.
It was bad.
Guys, I'm telling you, this was a rundown building in the middle of the valley on Woodman and Sherman Way.
Victory.
Woodman and
behind Tequila's restaurant.
Behind Tequila's restaurant. Dude. The first time I walked into Radford Meeting Hall, I walked in, it's like a low lit, kind of dingy meeting hall. I walked in and I saw this overweight Latina lady, and she was passed out on the ground, dude. She was passed out on the ground in a puddle of her own piss. And there was this skinny, older Indian man who was like trying to get her up and being like, oh, she's okay, guys, she's okay. It was like, welcome to Radford fucking Hall.
Dude, that's awesome.
This is where recovery happens,
Yeah.
It was just such a crazy place. And there's so many good but aside from that first experience, so many good relationships were made there.
Yeah.
And a lot of people depended on that place to get sober, because it was a meeting hall where they had meetings at,
all throughout the day, from starting at like 5 a.m. all the way to 10 p.m.
all the way to 10 p.m. I remember back in the day, we would on Mondays, we would go there for the rad for 8 p.m. and we'd go there at 8 p.m. and then the meeting would finish at 9. we'd hop in the car with Darian, then ride down to Marina Center.
Yeah.
And then he was the secretary, and then their meeting started there from 10 to 11.
Yeah.
And it's like constantly with people all the time, because being with people at that time in early recovery was safer than being alone. And it was depending on that fellowship that's so important. And also, you know, that's one of the, for people that are really struggling and need even more help, that's one of the beautiful benefits of being in a sober living, is that you're constantly around these people, around that community of your brothers. You know, you would lean on them, talk to them, hang out with them, you know, just so you're not in your own head and you don't get, because our own head can cause us to relapse and go back right into those dark places.
Yeah.
You know, so Bradford was just a beautiful place. I'm glad to hear it reopened. You know, and it's, you know, no fat Latina ladies are sprawled out. Maybe,
not
you know,
that I've seen yet. You know, who knows?
Yeah, perhaps. So, how did you get sober? What was your story? You know, how did you end up coming into sobriety?
My mom died when I was 16, and I talked about this morning. I was at a stag this morning, but I didn't get high before that, just because my mom, like, you know, she's going through cancer. It was messed up, but she was doing that, and she would vocalize like how bad she just like wanted me to stay away from like drugs, smoking weed, drinking, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I respected that. And then she died, and it was, you know, I was like, well, let's see what's up. You know, my brother had been smoking weed before me, and, you know, I tried it, and it's just one of those things where I was like, it was amazing. It was amazing for a time, and it did for me what I needed it to do, which was to just block everything out. And, you know, slowly but surely, like I would upgrade to different drugs and more alcohol and different people and worse people around me. And I started to, you know, become worse people. And, you know, there was just, you know, I'm sure you guys know what's up with getting high. So it's like the thing that happened where I was like, I want to get sober, was just, I was at work. I had just got done getting high, and I was sitting next to somebody that I knew was sober. And this dude was just like, now the way I would put it is, he was an example of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? It was the attraction. Not like, he wouldn't like tell me like, you need to go to a meeting, you need help. He wouldn't tell me any of that stuff. You know, he would just like stay in his lane and like show up for work and have a smile on his face. And I forgot what that was like, but it was enough for me to ask him to take me to a meeting. And he did. And that was the start of my recovery journey. And, you know, I remember thinking at a certain point, like, man, I can't wait to get to that point where, like, I wanted so badly to like be an example and like, you know, just have it be something where it's like, man, like, this guy can help, you know? And over the time, like, I don't think I recognize it when it's happening, but looking back, it's like, especially like when I was working in restaurants all the time, oh, let's go out, let's go get a drink, something like that. And I would go, but I wouldn't drink. And slowly, like, the questions would happen of like, oh, like, you don't drink, or why don't you drink? And I would just tell them, you know, like, well, I'm sober. I don't drink. I don't do this. And then, you know, oh, did you have a problem? Yeah. You know,
yeah.
And slowly, like, the questions would come up of like, or not the questions, but they would, you know, you'd see them pique that interest of, oh, you know, I've thought about that before. Or, you know, like, I've checked out a couple meetings and, you know, from time to time, whatever. And then, you know, a couple times they're like, hey, can I come with you sometime? And it's like, yeah, of course, you know. And that's like, you know, why we do what we do in a way, because it's like we're there to be the example. We're there to, like, you know, attract people that feel like they may need something like that. And it's very cool to think back on and just see how you've been able, you know, not just me, but like anybody who's been in that position, how like we've been able to walk through that and, you know, just show another alcoholic the door.
We get to be the people that hold the door open for others when they come in. At a year and a half sober, I went over to my neighbor's house with Nico. And unbeknownst to me, my neighbor was struggling with pill addiction to Xanax pills and alcoholism. And we were just having a conversation in the backyard, and her friend was like, "Oh yeah, I've been sober for like 3-4 months now." I'm like, "Oh, are you in AA? We're both sober too. I've been sober for like a year now." And she was like, "No, I'm pregnant." I was like, completely different reason why we're sober, because my friend was, friend who was an alcoholic was having a beer, and we were talking about, drinking. But that sparked a conversation with my neighbor who was having a beer, and she was like, "Oh," and she started asking me all these questions, and eventually she asked me, "Can I go to a meeting with you?" And I went to a meeting, and she was a girl, so I introduced her to some other really good women in sobriety that could help her get sober and be an example for her. And she found a great sponsor, and she's still sober to this day. I think she celebrated like 6 or 7 years of sobriety.
Yeah.
Just recently, I remember her mom came over to my house, and her mom like thanked my mother for me helping her get sober.
That's cool.
I
bet your mom loved that.
Yeah, she did. And she was like, "Thank you so much." She like said thank you, and my mom told me this. I was like, that it warmed my heart. It's amazing because this program changes lives. When you come into sobriety and you get sober and you actually do the work in the program, you become a different person, a whole different person.
Yeah.
Because you have to get rid of the person you were, because they were so broken and their way of thinking was so broken, that we talk about this thing of having a psychic change that is necessary to stay sober, because you have to completely overhaul your way of thinking, which was sick before, and so you could stay sober. And this new pattern of thought allows you to develop principles in your life that help you maintain long-term sobriety. And that's, you see people who are actively doing that, and you see people who are not actively doing that, and the people who aren't are dry. And I've been dry plenty times in my sobriety, plenty times where I've just been like the worst. I've been like the absolute worst person, even in sobriety, because I wasn't working a program. I wasn't living by spiritual principles.
Yeah.
And it's more hellish than when I was drinking and using.
Yeah, and you don't even want to drink. You want to kill yourself.
Yeah, you just want to kill yourself.
Yeah.
It's terrible,
Yeah.
And I wouldn't wish that upon anybody, You have this funny story about when you got gooned.
Oh,
People, so I'll just let you say it. Being gooned is an interesting thing.
So I'll preface it with this, where I was like 17 and, getting high, doing my thing, whatever, living at my dad's. And my friend had just gotten back from like a program in Utah or Arizona or something like that. And he just got back and we were partying, we were celebrating. I was like, "Bro, so like what happened? Like you just went willingly?" And he was like, "No, check it out. What's going to happen is you're just going to wake up and there's going to be 2 big ass dudes in your room and there's not going to be anything you can do about it." And I swear to God, that Friday night, I'm in bed, and it was, my dad played it so cool. I was like, "Look, man, like I showed up to school every day this week. Like it was, I deserved something for that. But I was like, I showed up to school every day. I did all my homework. Like, can you please turn my phone on?" Because he would always turn it off if I was like, just to teach me a lesson type of thing. And he was like, "All right, I'll tell you what, like if you promise not to sneak out or anything this weekend, like I'll turn your phone on for the weekend." And I was like, "All right, cool." And oh man. And I was even thinking, I was like, I'm gonna sneak out and go to my girlfriend's house tonight. And I was like, all right, I won't. And I'm asleep, and it's crazy because I remember my dad, like I didn't hear him come in, but I heard him talking, and he was like, "I just want you to know I love you so much, and I just don't know what else to do." And I didn't wake up, but I remember hearing that. And then I hear Clayton. And I was like, what? And they were like, Clayton, wake up. And I like woke up, two big ass dudes in my room.
Oh, fuck,
I was like, and they were like, hey man,
God.
we're here. And I was just like, I already know what's happening. Like, just let me get my stuff.
Oh,
dude.
fuck.
Yeah.
What was the first thought you had when you saw like those big ass dudes in your room?
Probably just like, oh fuck.
Fuck.
I even thought too, because I lived on the second story, but I was like, I can make that jump.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I'll jump.
That's that room, the 3-person room in the house? Upstairs?
No. If you go up the bathroom to the left of it.
Oh, to the left.
Yeah, that's the room.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, that's got a grassy area outside.
Yeah, I know.
Dude, you could definitely make that jump.
Oh, I've made that jump. I've made that jump before. Yeah.
Yeah.
And dude, and I was like getting some stuff, and I kind of glanced up, and the window was like open like that much, and I was like, I can make this. And I put my shoes on, and I looked up at the window one more time, and the dude saw me look at the window and just stepped in front of it. And I was like, all right, let's go. And then they put me in handcuffs and walked me to the car.
They put you in handcuffs?
Yeah, I was like, what? They were like, you gotta understand, like, people try to run, and I was like, I'm gonna yell bomb on this airplane. Yeah. I swear, like, it was so messed up, bro. Like, there was just nothing I could do. And then, of course, like, I get to the airport, and I'm like, nah, you probably shouldn't do this. Yeah. You know? I'm not gonna yell that. But, being 17, master manipulator at the time, I just said and did everything that they wanted me to do, and I graduated it in, like, quicker than anybody had before. It was, like, a 9-month to a year program. I was out of there in less than 5 months. Yeah. And I went home.
Well, did you go to Wilderness first?
No, I was in a therapeutic boarding school. Okay. Is like what they called it. Okay. So it was cool. It was not as bad as some of the places that I'm sure a lot of you have heard about, where it's like a lot of abuse and like, stuff like that. But what I will say is, like, I had to fight like kind of a lot. Yeah. That was like
physically?
Yeah, I had to fight other kids. Really? Yeah. Not because anybody was like making us, but just like, you got, I don't know how many it was, like 12 or 13, 15 to 17-year-olds in there, all trying to be the loudest and the toughest.
And these are all like troubled kids. There's a reason they're in therapeutic boarding school. Yeah. Because their parents couldn't handle them on their own. Yeah. And they're getting sent away.
Yeah. I remember, like, my first week, I was just like, they took us to the gym, and I kind of like, I was just keeping to myself. Like, I really didn't want to be there. I was making it like a miserable experience for myself by just like having that mentality. Like, this sucks. Like, I'm not going to do anything. And I was sitting up against the wall at like a basketball court, and this kid starts throwing the ball like above my head, next to my head. And I was like, don't hit me with that. And then he keeps doing it, and then I turned away for a second, and then looked back, and the ball hit me, and I hit my head on the brick wall, and then we just started fighting in the gym. Jeez. Like, I just got up and started fighting. Like,
that's crazy.
It was just stupid. Like, I understand the purpose of the places like that. You know, for me, at least, like, I got a very necessary break that I desperately needed. Yeah. Like, I was like ODing on Xanax, and just like trying to die. Yeah. And I don't want to say like I was trying to kill myself, but I was trying to die. Yeah. Yeah, of course. And I think those are two like very different things in a way. Yeah. Just, and so getting sent to that place, it like gave me what I needed for a time. But at the same time, I also think like a lot of these parents are just like, oh, you're troubled. I don't have time for this. Yeah. Get out of here. Yeah. Like, not my problem. Right. And that's the part of it that I disagree with, like that should be a last resort, because I feel like so many of these kids, especially like being there and talking to them, so many of them are just like, I don't talk to my dad, or like my mom, like, doesn't show up or want to talk to me. And it's like, thinking about that kind of stuff now, and like being in the industry we're in, it affects us so deeply to a level that I don't even think we really realize sometimes. Like those relationships with our parents, and like they feel like, or we feel like, oh well, they didn't try, so why should I? Type of thing. They don't love me, why should I love myself? Yeah. That's honestly, like, this might be controversial, but like I feel like when it comes to treatment and like mental health, because it's blowing up, like since pretty much TikTok and like COVID, all that came out, like you see all these messages about mental health and stuff like that. And what you mostly see is the solution is people just being thrown medication, you know? And I understand like medication is necessary, right? But I don't think it should be like a first response. I don't think it should be that all the time. Obviously, there are certain things that need that, but a lot of the time it's like fixing the way that we think and talk about ourselves, you know? Like if I constantly am thinking and saying like, oh, I'm a piece of shit or I'm an asshole or, you know, so on and so forth, right? Like I'm probably going to behave that way and be that way, right? And it's like, you know, trying to fix that, like it takes time and it's hard, but when you really try it and really start to do it, like I've had to do it with myself, you know?
Well, yeah, that's one of the things they talk about in CBT is that low self-talk. It's one of the things they address in cognitive behavioral therapy is that low self-talk.
Yeah.
Which is, I am a piece of shit, I'm worthless, I'm nothing, I'm this, I'm that. But I think one of the most dangerous things that can come out of this you know, where it's almost in vogue now to be depressed or to have anxiety.
Yes. It's cool. It's cool to do
you know,
those things.
to have these things. And then one of the dangers of these things is this phenomenon of labeling, where you label yourself as I'm depressed.
Yeah.
I'm anxious. I'm OCD. I'm this. And then because you've now labeled yourself as that, you play into that role more. And it could then be harder to get out of that role, which, you know, it's something commonly talked about as labeling in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. But it's so in vogue. Like I've seen TikToks now where kids are showing off their prescriptions. They're like, oh, I'm on Zoloft. I'm on lithium. I'm on, you know, benzodiazepine. What, you know, insert here. And they're like shaking their pill bottles. They're like, this is how fucked up mentally I am. And they're like taking pill bottles out of that.
It's ridiculous.
And I'm just like, this is ridiculous. I think there is a time and a place for all of these medications. And they're great medications that have saved lives, but they shouldn't be used in the long term. They should be used to help stabilize, develop good habits, coping habits, and then slowly be taken off or lowered over a period of time, but definitely not something that you should be on for the long term.
And I also want you to know that I'm not just talking about this for the first time. Like this, what I'm saying comes from long conversations and working alongside doctors and therapists in this industry and having these conversations specifically about this, you know, like this isn't like just, I'm not just talking out of my ass about this. Mm-hmm. You know, this is like been co-signed by, you know, professionals in mental health, you know, where it's like, yeah, the first thing that should be addressed is like your thought process towards yourself, you know, mm-hmm. and like how detrimental that part can be, you know, for yourself, your mental health, and even your recovery, you know. So I just wanted to put that out there.
It's not like we're talking out of our ass here, guys. We deal with this every single day because it's no longer, I would say 90% of the people coming into sober living, they're no longer just alcoholics.
Yeah.
Everyone is dual diagnosis nowadays, and everyone is on a spectrum of mental health. You know, are they like normal, or are they like, you know, on the further spectrum of, you know, mental health? But everyone is dealing with some sort of mental health problem. So we're constantly working with guys who are taking all these medications, from antidepressants to mood stabilizers. We don't allow benzodiazepines in our house, which is benzos, which is their classification of Xanax, lorazepam, Klonopin. We don't allow those in our houses, but we have worked with guys who have come in with that, and we taper them off slowly with their help of their doctor as well.
Yeah, mostly the doctor with our help.
Yeah,
right. Because we're not doctors.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not even mental health professionals. We just know, like, we've been in this game long enough to understand, you know, like to you see something enough, like you're gonna start to understand how it works.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, you know, we obviously it's like we do our best to like be understanding of every situation that comes in, you know, but I think also we can tell like the guys that are like, oh, like I'm on Suboxone or I'm on methadone or blah, blah, blah. It's like, cool. Well, if you want to be here, you got to get off it. And right then with their response is like, or like, okay, I'm about it. You know, if that person really wants to be, let's do it. Yeah, I'll do whatever it takes. Right. Or it's like, maybe not.
You know, and know what the one of the fucked up things is treatment centers these days will put their clients on Suboxone even though they don't need to be on Suboxone.
Yeah.
So they could get more treatment days for the client from the insurance company. It's more of a reason to keep them there when they don't necessarily need to be kept there themselves.
Big pharma. No.
Big pharma. Fuck those guys. Fuck you, Purdue.
Oh my God.
For getting us addicted to opiates.
Yeah. That's
so dumb. But no, we were talking about like mental health cases. I remember my first real interaction with somebody who had mental health in our house was that kid Harrison.
Oh my God.
And this is...
Were you there? Were you living there?
Yeah, I was living there. So this is back... when we first started Bloom, back in 2020, we both used to live there. I lived upstairs, Clayton lived downstairs in one of the bedrooms. We wanted to be hands-on. We were living there, which was a crazy experience. I wouldn't recommend it if you have long-term sobriety, living in a sober living. Anyways, this kid, Harrison, this kid had a lot of mental health issues. And basically what happened was one night in the middle of the night, he went into the living room or the foyer of the house and he grabbed a knife and was standing there shouting at the top of his lungs,
I'll fucking kill you.
I'll fucking kill you.
I'll fucking kill you, bitch.
I'll fucking kill you.
And then I came out. And because I was, I don't know if I was asleep yet, but I was like, what the fuck is that? And I walk out and he's standing there like over the couch. Like nobody's sitting on, he's just standing over the couch with a knife like, I'll fucking kill you, bitch. And I like hesitated to go up to him because I was like, what if this kid just turns around and fucking stabs me, you know? But I was like, Harrison, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And without missing a beat, I'm like, what are you doing? He turns to me and goes, I'm writing poetry. And I was like, this guy's gonna murder everyone in this house. Like, he has to leave.
He has to go.
And that night, we had to ask him to leave because it's like, it's not fair for us to be in a position to try to help somebody like that. You know, like we cannot. We're there because we know how to stay sober long term. When it comes to mental health, it's like, you know, it's not what we know how to do. You know, like I said, we are not mental health professionals, right? What's even funnier about that is the next day, Artie was eating a bowl of cottage cheese and was like, this tastes funny. And then Steve tried some and he goes, yeah, there's soap in there. And this kid, Harrison, put a bunch of soap in all our food. He had stabbed all our fruit. It was like, what the fuck? It was really funny.
Dude, I forgot about the soap. I forgot about the stabbing of the fruit. Yeah, this guy would just stab our fruit. I remember one time he was confronted he like stabbed some fruit. I think this was all the same night. He like, when we asked him to leave, he like stabbed some fruit and then took the knife and just like went to the park or something.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah, because we asked that, I was like, get out, like leave. And then he came back.
Yeah.
And then he started screaming again. I don't remember what he was yelling this time, but I had stayed awake because I wanted to hear when he was going to come back.
Yeah.
And he came back like an hour and a half later or something, and he started screaming again. I was like, dude, that's it. Like, you gotta go.
Yeah.
He is a very, different type of mental health case, though. And it sucks because in and out, in between all that, he's a cool guy. Like, he really is. Like, I play basketball with him. Like, I know people that still work with him, And it sucks because when he is medicated, he's a zombie.
Yeah.
And he can't even participate in the good aspects like of life that like he
Yeah.
can contribute to.
Yeah.
You know, which is it's hard to watch. You know, but you know, nonetheless, it's you know.
Yeah, and it was one of those cases of what came first, the chicken or the egg, with his mental health and his drug addiction, because you knew him before he started using drugs, yeah?
No, I didn't.
Or I think people knew him in the community before he started using drugs. I had talked to people who had knew him in the community, and they're like, yeah, he's a fine guy, he's a nice guy. He played basketball with a bunch of people. He was like super affable and gregarious and had friends. And then he started smoking a lot of weed and I think using methamphetamine, and he had a psychotic break and was never the same
I
again.
think it was that and a combination of hallucinogens.
Oh, some mushrooms?
I think it was like ayahuasca or something.
Yeah, it was
like something crazy.
It was
where
something
like,
crazy that just like caused him to have it was a switch turned on in him, and he has never been the same ever again.
Yeah.
You know, I've talked to people who in our house were like on meth for a number of years, and they would have been at this point they'd been 6 months sober or so, and they still believed that some of the psychoses that they experienced while they were on meth were actually real. Like they still believed that they were like
off drugs
while they were off drugs for like 6 months, 7 months. They still believed that
drones were being flown outside their windows.
Exactly.
I know exactly who you're talking about right now.
Exactly.
I know exactly who you're referring to.
Yeah. You know? I've heard some crazy stories, man, and it's just like, wow, you know what these drugs do to you, and you know what kind of state they'll put you in, and you still, even with this much sobriety under your belt, you still believe that this stuff happened to you. It just goes to show how powerful these drugs are.
And what they can really do to your psyche, what they do to your brain chemistry.
Yeah. I mean, we're so lucky to get out on the other side without any like huge damage to
dude
ourselves.
Also like getting sober before fentanyl is what it is today. I think about that all the time. Like, dude, even if I wanted to go back to heroin, like I couldn't.
Yeah, there's
it's
not. It doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
Heroin is like so hard to come by. It's all just fentanyl now.
Yeah,
it's all of it.
Yeah, being at it, it's like I already know I'd die.
Yeah.
I already know.
Yeah, immediately.
It's not even appetizing, which is good. Like that's something like I trained myself like to kind of almost be disgusted by the idea of drugs and alcohol.
Yeah,
because it like once you're sober for a little bit, obviously it's like the obsession and to want to get high or drink. It's like it's lifted, and then with that, like when that happened, I was like. I would watch new people come in, or even just see people on the street and like almost be disgusted. I'm like, fuck, that's gross, dude.
Yeah.
Like I know that if I go back, that's what's waiting for me.
Yeah.
I know that's where my life's gonna go.
Yeah.
And that's like I've trained myself to like have that thought process when it comes to playing the tape through, to where even if it crosses my mind for a second, it's like ew. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And we've come across so many drugs in our sober living, just because people are sick, and they even though they're in a place where all it is to focus on their sobriety and be sober, it's the number one rule, they just can't stay sober because it's like they're either forced into sobriety by the court system, their family, their job. They're there on their own accord, but they're still sick and they're not doing what needs to be done. And because of that, they'll often resort to, recede back to using drugs again while in the house. And it's up to us to, make sure that stuff doesn't happen. So that's why we drug test 3 times a week, and we're always there supervising. But one of the funniest stories of that was that kid named Mitch.
Oh my God.
Mitch was a funny guy.
We've changed all these names, by the way, just so...
Yeah, these people aren't actually named these things.
Yeah,
these
but we
names.
went over it before, so when he said Harrison, I knew who he was talking about. When he said Mitch, I knew who he was talking about.
Exactly, anonymous. Anyways, this guy, he came. This is while I was still living at the house, and I was working downstairs on my laptop past, lights out time. It was like 11:30. He had come downstairs to get like a snack. This guy was a portly dude.
That means fat.
Very rotund.
Obese.
Obese, if you will. But anyways, he comes downstairs and he's like, "What's up, Eric?" And he like daps me up. And I look at him, I'm like, there's just a huge white circle around one of his nostrils. And I'm like, come here. And he's like, what's around your nostril? And he's like, oh, it's shaving cream. I'm like, bullshit. Okay? Because earlier that day, he had taken an Uber to Koreatown to go see a transgender prostitute to have sex with. And he came back.
Good for him.
And good for him, but whatever he likes. But he came back and, and this was earlier in the evening, and he came back and this was at nighttime, and he had a big circle, and I like said, hold on, let me take a picture of this. I took a picture, I sent it to Clayton. I'm like, do you think this is shaving cream or do you think this is drugs? And Clayton's like, no, this is drugs. And so Clayton was still living there. Where were you?
I wasn't home, but I came back because I was like, this is so funny.
This is like so funny.
He wouldn't give it up, right?
No, he wasn't. I searched his room and I didn't find anything, but because he was obese, he never liked to wear a shirt. He was wearing these athletic shorts, and in the waistband of his athletic shorts was his wallet, and it, tucked in behind his back, and on his waist was his wallet. And I was like, oh, you're trying to hide your wallet. It was very obviously he was trying to hide his wallet. And I was like, let me see your wallet. And he wouldn't give it to me. Finally, I had to pry it from his hands. And what was in the wallet but 3 grams in 3 separate bags of ketamine. And I'm like, oh, this guy's just railing ketamine in our house.
Yeah.
Fucking fantastic.
He was, what was funny is because I had gotten there at right as you found it, I think. And you go, look at this. I go, oh, okay. And I look at him. I go, so what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And I was like, it's time for you to start talking. Like, get honest.
Yeah.
And that's like something I think, anybody that, runs treatment center, sober living, anything, it's like give that person the opportunity to be honest. But I say, time for you to get honest. And he's like talking and he's trying to lie. And I go, look, like if you're honest right now, like we can work something out where like you can stay and start over. But if not, like you gotta go, man.
Yeah.
Because it is what it is. Like you got high.
Yeah.
But at least if you're honest, like I can work with that.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, if you kick me out, can I get my drugs back? We were like, no, dude. Like,
no,
what?
absolutely not.
It was
That's
like
a wash.
And then he got honest once he realized he couldn't get it back.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous stuff like that happen. It's just like so many stories like that have happened over the past 4 years from us running this sober living, and just insane stuff has happened. But I will say there have been it's sad that most of the people that have come through our doors haven't been able to maintain long-term sobriety.
Not just our doors, like this is just sobriety.
This is just sobriety. This is like most people. It's unfortunate they don't get long-term sobriety. The recidivism rate is quite high, but those handful of people who have gotten long-term sobriety, I'm talking years of sobriety, it makes it all worth it. And it's just so, so rewarding. I remember I used to get so frustrated at the beginning, and Clayton was like, you were like, dude, most people that are going to come here aren't going to stay sober.
Yeah.
You had to reality check me. Because I would get so sad when people would relapse. Because it would really affect me emotionally. I'm like, fuck, man.
We get, because we involve ourselves emotionally, we almost think putting ourselves in that position, it's like, I can save this person.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't happen, we blame ourselves, and it's not, it's not how it works. These people either are or are not going to stay sober, and it kind of has very little to do with us personally.
Yeah.
Or anybody in our position personally.
Yeah. But that is the thing, is this job is so emotionally taxing.
Yeah.
Because you know, we're very hands-on owners. Like some owners of other sober livings, they just like hire a house manager that's live in and they just collect the rent and it's a flop house, you know? And they're not hands-on. We're super hands-on. Like we make sure that we're involved in everybody's life who's in our house in some way or another, checking in with them, talking to them, making sure they get a job, making sure they get sponsors, going to meetings, making sure they're working the steps all the time, just like involvement in every facet of their life, that we get really emotionally involved. And it hurts so much when that person relapses, or if they do relapse, you know, and it's super taxing.
Yeah.
Super taxing. I was actually having a conversation last night with, you know, somebody asked me, what's the hardest part of your job? And I said, it's the emotional labor of it.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's so difficult, you know, it's not much, you know, it's not like I'm an engineer here, you know, putting together aerospace planes. I'm helping guys get sober, and it's just very, very emotionally taxing. So
What's been the best part? What's the best part and the worst part to you about doing stuff like this?
The best part, I would say, is I would have to say watching somebody get their life back and completely turn their life around and get long-term sobriety, and seeing them get their family back, getting a career back, sponsoring other guys. Like I always think of Corey, man. Like I always think of Corey.
That's who you think of?
Yeah.
I think of Luke.
You think of Luke?
Yeah.
Oh, Luke is a huge one. Yeah. Luke, shout out to you, Luke, man. You've completely changed. He came into our house, man. God. That man completely changed his life around.
That's been a time where I was like, all right, I was wrong.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
like did not think for a second, like even kind of when we gave him the ultimatum, I was like, he's going to bounce. Yeah. You know, like let's let him decide if he doesn't want to go through with what we were offering. He had to leave. And he stayed, and bro.
We put this guy on a verbal. So basically what a verbal is before they speak when they're in the house. This is just within the confines of the house. This is not to embarrass them when they're outside the house. But he has to address himself. I think, what was his...
So
Hi,
we gave him Luke. We gave him his 3 most prominent character defects, and he had to say those things before he said, my name's Luke, I'm loud, I'm obnoxious, and I don't respect people's boundaries. And he had to say that every time before he spoke. And then he was either given permission to speak or not. And if he was not allowed to talk. On top of that, he was on a pull-up program where even if he wasn't talking, but he was doing something that was like disrupting the comfort of like someone else, would go up to him and be like, I'm pulling you up. What you're doing is X, Y, and Z, and I need you to stop. And he has to say, okay, and then walk away. Yeah. And stop doing whatever it is. But what I will say is he embraced that, and over time, like he would do his verbal, and he may not even be screaming or yelling, but he'd be like, I'm loud, I'm obnoxious, I don't respect people's boundaries, and then start talking and be like, oh, I'm getting loud. You know? And like start realizing it for himself. And then also like he'd be doing something and he's like, oh, boundaries, my bad. You know, like stuff like that. And it was so cool to watch. It was so cool. And like he is somebody I love when he calls me. I love talking to him because it's just he's such a light now. You know, he used to be so miserable and annoying to be around. Yeah. Right. But he's such a light, just like, how are you, man? Like, good to talk to you. Blah, blah, blah. I'm out here killing it. Yeah. I'm like, damn, dude. Like, if someone wants it bad enough, man, like, they'll do it. Like, no matter what. They're willing to go. We say we're willing to go to any lengths, because we know the life before that we were living was so miserable. And it was a life not worth living. But we're given this chance, we're given this opportunity to reinvent ourselves, completely have a change in our way of thinking, and have a life that is worth living. Yeah. And that's what we're here trying to give other, people struggling with the same disease that we were given, that we had. So, if you
I think that's all the time we got. But, you know, if you're struggling with alcoholism or substance abuse, feel free to reach out to Clayton or I. I'll drop the links in the bio. I'll drop our phone numbers in the bio or contact information. If you or a family member is struggling, please feel free to reach out, contact us. And, you know, if we can't help you, we'll at least try and point you in the right direction of somewhere that can help you. So feel free to let us know. Anything you want to say to wrap it up?
I wish you could see yourself through my eyes, because then you would realize how beautiful your life truly is and how beautiful you truly are.
There you go. Thanks. Thank you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Dude,
I appreciate it.
you.